Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. We welcome you to our Administrative Matters meeting here in the hearing room at the Larimer County Administrative Services Building. It is Tuesday, November 14th, 2023, and we are here for our Administrative Matters meeting. We will call this meeting to order, and please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, thank you for joining us and joining us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I am Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shai McNally, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners, and I welcome you to our meeting this morning. I'm also joined at the dais by my colleagues, Larimer County Commissioner Kristen Stevens and Larimer County Commissioner John Kafalis. Also joining us today and helping us with our meeting is our clerk to the board, Tessa Beatty, who was also with us late last night. Thank you, Tessa, for your work. We have our county manager, Lorenda Volker. We have our from our public information office. We have Tom Clayton, and we have Sarah Martin from the Commissioner's office, who helps us with all sorts of things, but today she'll be helping us with our schedule and with our public comment. So with that, I will now open public comment, and we have a couple of people that have signed up. You will have 3 minutes for public comment. If you would come to the podium and identify yourself where you're from, you have that 3 minutes. So I'll invite Mr. Bean to the podium. Welcome, and please identify yourself where you're from, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ed Bean. I live at 3580 Stanford Road in Fort Collins, and my comments are going to be pretty impromptu, pretty brief, expressing concern about the continued operations of Prospect Energy north of Fort Collins. You all are aware of the flow line leak that took place on October 31st, trick or treat. It seems as if the situation may be as under control as you can expect from something like that. One of the concerns that occurred to me as we circulated information about this to our community, if that city of Fort Collins worker doing their survey had not come across that leak, there is no telling how long it would have gone on and what damage would have happened. And even though there wasn't a great deal of oil involved in the spill, the compounds in that drilling fluid, even if it's not fracking fluid, it's conventional drilling fluid, still it's not something you want getting into the water table, getting into an irrigation ditch, anything like that. You've heard us rail about Prospect Energy for years now. They seem to be our favorite problem child. They had those two incidents in 2022, and one of those, egregious air quality violations from the Krause tank facility that just been going on for years. So I don't know what you can do to influence the state on this in terms of possibly getting them to shut this operation down. It just doesn't seem like the way they are operating is particularly responsible, and it just doesn't seem acceptable for us here. So strongest statements that you can make to the state entities that would be responsible on that would be appreciated. If they're going to continue operating, for sure, they really need to have better financial assurances in place than seems to be the case at the state level. So thank you for your consideration on that.
Thank you, Ed, for your public comment. We appreciate you being here today. I will now invite Mr. Gosar up to make public comment. Welcome.
Commissioners, welcome. Good morning. I've got a handout for you guys.
You can give it to Sarah and Sol. Thank you.
So I've got 4 copies for everybody. Good morning, Commissioners. Tim Gosar, longtime resident of Larimer County and steering committee member of the Larimer Alliance for Health, Safety, and the Environment. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. As Ed alluded to, I'm here to speak about Prospect Energy. One of your commission's great accomplishments was rewriting the Larimer County oil and gas regulations that went into effect on September 15th of 21 that prioritized and better protected public health, safety, the environment, and wildlife. I think I can speak for the community and say thank you. Our organization sent you some information about the 10/31/23 spill that Ed alluded to from Prospect Energy. I've handed you some information about that damaging and harmful spill as well. Willfully polluting, poisoning, and disregarding the health and safety of residents of Larimer County, the environment and wildlife is very troubling to say the least and must be stopped. How much bigger and more damaging and dangerous would that spill have been had it not been discovered by the City of Fort Collins employee? Your new oil and gas regulations have a few sections important to my comments. Enforcement and inspection, bottom of page 27. New and existing oil and gas facilities must maintain compliance or can be suspended or revoked, which is what gives you the authority. The next page, cease and desist. The director has the authority to issue a cease and desist order, which you have pushed for and were successful against Prospect Energy last year. This is the mechanism that the county can use to issue a cease and desist order all by itself. Colorado and Larimer County require that oil and gas is regulated in a way that prioritizes public health, safety, and environment and wildlife. The violations of the law are clear and convincing per county's oil and gas regulations and Colorado law. Prospect Energy has repeatedly and continually poisoned, damaged, and harmed our community and should lose its license to operate. A cease and desist order issued by Larimer County is more than called for, along with taking the additional step of shutting all of these facilities and operations down. Prospect Energy is a clear and present danger to our community. You have the authority and power, which I implore you to use, to shut them down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gosar, for your public comment. So I will now see if there's anyone else in the room who would like to make public comment. Okay, Sarah, do we have anyone online who would like to make public comment?
No, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. So seeing no other persons that would like to make public comment, I will close public comment. Now I will see if my colleagues would like to respond. Commissioner Stevens, would you like to start?
Sure, I'd be happy to start. Thank you, Ed and Tim, for coming in. And I probably need to meet with, and maybe my other commissioners can speak better about this, but Matt and our health department folks to see where we're at. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Prospect's been a horrible offender in our community. I don't think that they've I think that they continue to try to push the envelope on what they can do and how they can break safety rules. And I think it's because I think you're right. We probably need more financial assurances. I'm assuming it's because they are running a very small operation and not even extracting that much in some of their wells. So that's my promise to you, is that I'll go back and talk and see what we can do. We've definitely put in our budget, space for continuing to address these kind of situations in the community. So that's something that will remain in our budget regardless of what happens with the special session with the governor this weekend. So we're committed to keep doing this work. I don't have a handle on kind of where we are with this leak situation. No, we knew it happened. But why it happened, why it only got caught because of a city employee and some of those other details I just don't have at this time. So and my colleagues can probably fill in if they know that information. But I do think that they're a bad player in our community. It's exactly the kind of thing that we want to prevent because we are concerned about the health and welfare of the community. And so I will follow up. And thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Commissioner Kofalis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Tim and Ed, for public comment. Good morning to everyone. A couple of things I would add. One is that regarding the Halloween oil spill, I think you're aware that our public health folks and others, once we were informed that this had occurred, they were on the scene. The state came in. So that there was a quick response and an isolation of the spill, and I don't know what the outcome was in terms of evaluating how much potential damage may have occurred to the ground or to the irrigation water. That's something that I think merits follow up. A second point I wish to make, which I thought I heard Ed speak to and that is how well we did in terms of informing the public about what happened. And I think there may have been an article in the Colorado, but that's something we should follow up on. I can't recall if our health department put out a press release or something along those lines to speak to how we responded to that. A couple more things I'll mention is that you're aware that we purchased and are deploying an infrared camera. The county did, and I think that will be helpful as we look at some of these sites, to better understand emissions that are coming off of these sites. There was a reference to the 2022 violation, the storage tanks, and so this will help us with that and not have to rely on others to check that. Regarding the authority that the county has on cease and desist, I think maybe we need to go back and revisit that conversation with our county attorney Frank Haug, and certainly Matt Sura to look at that, because I think there's been some difference of opinion about exactly what the oil and gas regs allow for. So, thank you, and those are my comments in regards to what you all brought up.
Thank you, Commissioner. First, I want to thank Mr. Gosar, Mr. Bean, for being here today and giving your public comment. Yes, we are very concerned about the continued bad operations and danger to the community of the safety, health, and welfare from these operations. Yes, I agree with you. Thank goodness that facility, Fort Collins worker, found it. Otherwise, we don't know how long it might have been leaking. And I'm glad that we addressed flow lines with our new regulations. I believe we were one of the first to kind of address that. So also, I do know that with our financial assurances, we have some of the stricter ones in the state. I know currently our staff have been wrestling with that. I think that current operator didn't want to wanted to have a variance or push back on that. I do think there's a hearing coming up very soon for this operator with the state. As Commissioner Stevens stated, I know that we have shown with our budget our commitment to following through with these, having additional staffing, outside staffing to support our planning staff to make sure that we're continue to keep the pressure on folks who are violating with these incidents that are really not good for our environment for those communities. I don't know where, as you know, where we're at. I know we were notified of those hearings and also of this violation, and this is something that because of this operator being informed of an issue and then fixing it within the time frame, and then kind of not getting a violation and then being able to do another violation a few months later, we've been having that conversation about what does that look like when there's a pattern within a certain year of continued violations. And so I think that conversation kind of stalled, and so we need to kind of look at that again. In my opinion. And so I look forward to following it with staff. I think we'll probably do that this week. Maybe even if staff's listening, they might be able to contact us and let us know where we're at with that. And I do appreciate you coming here today and speaking up for those folks, and we appreciate your advocacy for that community. So thank you for being here today. And so with that, I think we could talk about this for a long time. It was a long stretch of time to get those regulations in place, but I am concerned about that flow line leak, and I'm really grateful that we put in place with our regulations what we had. So now we have to see how that works with that part of the regulations. So with that, we'll move on and move on to our next item on the agenda. And thank you again for being here. We have a discussion of the approval of the minutes. And so I'm curious, colleagues, do you have any additions or changes to the minutes? Okay, so I would welcome Commissioner Stevens a motion to approve the minutes.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes for the week of November 6th, 2023.
Thank you for that motion. Any further deliberation? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. And now we'll turn this over to Sarah Martin, who's going to review our schedule, which will be limited with the holiday coming up.
This is the Commissioner schedule for November 20th through the 24th, 2023. On Monday, November 20th, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., there will be a work session for an update on draft 2023 to 2028 strategic plan goals and objectives in the Commissioners' Conference Room on the second floor. From 1:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m., there will be a work session with Leslie Ellis, Director of Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources in the Commissioners' Conference Room on the second floor. From 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., there will be an annual inspection of the Larimer County Jail at 2501 Midpoint Drive in Fort Collins. On Tuesday, November 21st, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., there will be an Administrative Matters meeting in the hearing room on the first floor. From 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m., Commissioner Stevens may participate in the virtual Community Corrections Advisory Board meeting. From 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m., there will be administrative direction to the county management in the Sprague Lake Conference Room on the second floor. From 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., Commissioner Shattuck McNally may participate in the virtual South Platte Basin Roundtable meeting. From 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., Commissioner Kafalis will attend the LaPorte Planning Advisory Committee meeting in Lake Estes on the third floor. On Wednesday, November 22nd, there's an open schedule. On Thursday, November 23rd, 2023, county offices will be closed in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday, and on Friday, November 24th, 2023, county offices will be closed in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday. That's it.
Thank you, Sarah. Colleagues, do you have any questions or additions or changes? Commissioner Kafalis.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sarah. Regarding the LaPorte Planning Advisory Committee, I would change the will to a may, because that is our 42nd wedding anniversary, and I'm not sure if my spouse wants to attend the LAPAC meeting with me, so we'll have to see what we're planning that evening. And then, did you speak to the Monday morning work session and how here it refers to the ARPA discussion, and the calendar says strategic plan discussion?
It looks like it was updated to say the work session is for the strategic plan goals and objectives. So yours says ARPA, but it was updated.
Thank you kindly.
Okay. I don't have any other additions. I mean, I have other things happening, but they don't need to be listed on the calendar. I have some boards and commission interviews, so I'm trying to get caught up on those. So, Sarah, thanks for getting those scheduled. I think that's all I have, so let's move on now to our consent agenda, and I will just let people know I'm going to read over the consent agenda at a high level, and for those who'd like to drill down and see details about the consent agenda, times, details, parties involved, things like that, you can go to our Larimer County Board of County Commissioners website. There is all the details about our agendas, our meetings, our schedules, our emails, former meeting videos, and I welcome you to find more and learn more there. So I'm going to talk about the consent. For those, most of us know consent agenda, but we might have some folks in the audience who are unfamiliar. But the consent agenda consists of items of no perceived controversy and routine administrative actions such as abatements, agreements, deeds, final plots, liquor license, resolutions, and other matters previously reviewed by the Board of County Commissioners. And staff recommends approval of the consent agenda, and a commissioner may request that an item be pulled off the agenda and considered separately. Items pulled off the agenda will be considered after the board takes action on the remainder of the consent agenda. So now I'll read through. We have 3 agreements. The first is a construction services agreement for a resolicitation of a bid for the fuel site at the ranch. And this is between the Board of County Commissioners and ET Technologies Incorporated. We have the Animal Control and Sheltering Services Agreement by NOCO Humane, who is formerly known as Larimer County Humane Society. If those folks who are wondering why the new name, Larimer County Humane Society merged with Weld County and to become one entity to help out Weld County, and so now it's called NOCO Humane. And that is a contract through December 31st of 2024. We have a professional services agreement for the behavioral health behavior health facility food service management, which is really important as we're getting ready to open that site and make sure we have food for those residents, our people that are our clients and people that we're taking care of. And that is between the Board of County Commissioners, Larimer County, and Sodexo America LLC. And again, the details are there, and that will be through November 14th of 2024. It's a year contract. So now we have appointments. We have a recommended appointment to the Workforce Development Board of Mr. Grody. We have, congratulations, we have a recommended reappointment to the Bonao West PID. Thank you, Mr. Jacko. For your continued service, we have a recommended appointment to the Community Corrections Advisory Board of Mr. Heffy. Thank you for your service. And a recommended youth member appointment to the Environmental Science and Advisory Board of Mr. Murphy. So we welcome them all and thank them for their service. We have at least 4 deeds. Well, actually, we have 7. So we have a deed of dedication of right-of-way purposes for the Seaworth Ag Enterprises Incorporated to Larimer County. And this is an acquisition of a right-of-way associated with road improvements, again, as we're continuing that improvements for safety reasons on County Roads 9 and 70. And we have a deed of dedication of right-of-way of right-of-way purposes for, again, Seaworth, R.E. Seaworth and Sons LLP to Larimer County for the same intersection and road improvements. We have deed of dedication for right-of-way purposes to TR Holdings LLC for the same area. And we have a deed of dedication of right-of-way 6 for right-of-way purposes for Seaworth Farms Incorporated to Larimer County for road improvements just on County Road 70. And we have a deed of dedication right-of-way 8 for right-of-way purposes for Seaworth Farms Land Company LLC. And this is just for road improvements along County Road 70. And then we had a deed of dedication right-of-way 21 for right-of-way purposes for TTR Holdings LLC to Larimer County, which is road improvements along County Road only 9. And then we have a deed of dedication right-of-way 22 for right-of-way purposes for Seaworth Ag Enterprises to Larimer County, which is a right-of-way acquisition for road improvements only along County Road 9. We have 2 liquor licenses to discuss. We have liquor license renewal for Young's Liquor Renewal in Fort Collins, and we have a findings and order for KOA Colorado Beverage LLC for the KOA campground on Fort Collins, and we have a miscellaneous. We have a quarter 2 and quarter 3 2023 public trustee report submitted by our treasurer and public trustee Irene Josie. We have a Western Auto Supply stipulation as to tax year 2023 value. Actually, items 2 through 11 are tax stipulations as to tax year for the 2023 value. So I will not read through all of those. You can find more details. There are 11 of them. We have a policy on number 1, which is a human resources policy and procedure 331. Point 8H, a corrective and adverse action grievance policy and problem-solving process submitted by our Human Resources Department as a part of the Power DMS policy tool testing. The HRT made some small updates to clean up the policy and make some updates consistent with current practice. We have a resolution establishing compensation for a Deputy District Attorney 3 submitted by the District Attorney's Office, and that's all we have on our consent agenda. Colleagues, do you have any items you wish to pull from the consent agenda? Okay, so with that, Commissioner Cavalls, I'd welcome a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda for November 14th, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner. With no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We don't have comments from commissioners' guests. I don't have a guest. Colleagues, did you bring a guest today? Okay. So now we'll move on to our first discussion item, which is the Larimer County Sheriff's Office Operations 2023 year-end updates. And so we'll invite Mr. Justin Whitesell up to the podium to have this discussion. For our emergency services, like to provide an update on the success of 2023. And I'm sure you're going to go through all the stats and procedures. So thank you for being here this morning, Justin. It's great to see you.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners and County Manager. Hopefully you got the document, and I did have a PowerPoint. I don't know if I have a flash drive, if maybe I could, if not a big deal. I can just go through the document if that's easiest.
sorry, I should turn this on. Let's go ahead and walk through the document since Sarah is not here.
Yeah, no problem.
And it is published online for anyone following along or watching. They can find it online with the agenda packet.
Yeah, nope, not a problem at all. So at the beginning of 2023 in the spring, I'd come before the commissioners and gave you an update on a couple programs we added to emergency operations, and then a quick overview of emergency operations. And at that presentation, you all had asked that I'd come back and give you some statistics and data and updates on emergency operations. So that's why I'm here today. So I do want to highlight that this is the high level emergency operations. I didn't really dive down into the weeds of what we do and the specifics. I really wanted to highlight the high level work that we're doing. Obviously there's a lot that goes on that people don't realize, and but I tried to want to capture that here in a short time window that we have. So obviously one of the big programs that we started for the Sheriff's Office was our emergency operations medical program for the Sheriff's Office, and that individual, he responds to all of our high-risk medical or high-risk calls, such as our Archer or SWAT call-outs, our wildland fire, search and rescue, dive rescue, drug task force, any of those items where the potential for a medical need is high. He responds on all those. So he responded just this year from January till the beginning of November. He responded to 111 high-risk medical incidents. Obviously, for one person, that's a significant impact to the other duties that individual has as well. He's a liaison with our EMS agencies, with Thompson Valley, UC Health, Estes Valley, and works with them. But obviously, they can't always provide medical resources because they have to respond in the city with the ambulance. So he does that for us. But obviously he spent a lot of time doing that. He also does a lot of training. The Sheriff's Office used to use a third-party contractor to do our medical training, first aid, CPR, those kind of trainings for the Sheriff's Office. But our medical program is going to take that over and be able to do more real-world, high-stress medical training that is more relevant for our personnel. We don't really see the blisters and the cuts. It's going to be more stab wounds, gunshots, those kind of things that our folks are dealing with. So we really want to make sure that we ramp up our medical training. So far this year, he's already conducted 120 hours of training to our personnel, Fort Collins PD, Loveland PD, CSU, Police Department. So we work with all the agencies trying to implement this training. And that includes Stop the Bleed, Run, Hide, Fight with Poudre School District. So very broad medical training, but he does a lot. Because of all the work that he's doing and the impact we're seeing and that gap that we didn't realize until about 2 years ago with our medical program, we realized the impact that he's made and the burden that's been on him. So December 28th, we will be taking one of our full-time employees from the Sheriff's Office and making another paramedic that's one of our deputy, but he's also a paramedic, and so there'll be 2 people on the emergency medical program with the Sheriff's Office to hopefully spread out the high-risk calls and the training and the additional work that we're going to be doing for next year with the medical canine training and things like that we're implementing. So that's our hopes. But with that, we are adding another paramedic. And then the medical cadre that I talked about for the training, we do have an internal medical cadre that he's working with and developing and making sure they have the appropriate training to do CPR first aid. So he's diving into that and making sure our folks are well trained. The next one is the Wildfire Partners Program, something that you should all be familiar with. Raina Eshelman, who took that position earlier this year, she's been doing some great work, as some of you have witnessed and experienced on your own. But to date, between her and Derek Rosenquist, the person that used to do some of the aspects of her job as collateral duty, they've completed 67 home inspections. And the inspections are what is required for permitting to be either new, renovated residents or short-term rentals. So that's a pretty significant number for her. The other one there is the assessments. The assessments are something new that we've created with Raina coming on, and those are similar to the inspections, but assessments are voluntarily requested by the homeowner, the property owner, for us to come out and tell them what they can improve upon for wildfire to reduce their threat to wildland fire. So she's done 83 of those since July 31st, which is a significant number as well, because she spends about 3 to 4 hours with the homeowners at each site going over those. So a significant amount of work for her, and constantly talking to her about when we need to look at adding additional people to her program or volunteers. Right now, one of the things we have done that she has done to help is created an ambassador program with the fire departments throughout Larimer County. She has 6 other fire districts on board with the ambassador program, so she trains them to go out and do the exact same assessments that she does. And she spends quite a bit of time with those fire departments to make sure that we're in alignment on how we do the inspections, the report that comes out, so there's no miscommunication between the county and the fire department. So she's done 83 of those this year from July 31st to November 1st. Obviously, she's continuing those, which is a big part of our program. And then, as I'm sure you're aware, she's working with the Office of Emergency Management to do the Middle Mile Task Force, which is looking at the wildfire fuels debris issue that we have. So we do a lot of mitigation work. But when you do mitigation work, you leave behind a lot of debris, trees, shrubs that need to be disposed of or burnt. And that's the hard part for homeowners. They want to do the mitigation work, but getting rid of that material becomes burdensome and expensive. So between Raina and the Office of Emergency Management, I'm sure we will come up with some great solutions that we can provide to the commissioners to hopefully guide us in that. The next piece is the suppression module. And I just want to, so there's an initial attack module and the suppression module. The suppression module goes out across the country because we were moderately busy, I would say, here in Larimer County, not just with fires, but all of our incidents from floods to fires to search and rescue. The suppression module was able to go out a few more times this year than it has in the past. And typically, the suppression module goes out with anywhere from 7 to 12 personnel on that module, made up of our initial attack module folks and then our temporary on-call firefighters. And they will travel around the country. They've been to Texas, several fires here in Colorado, New Mexico, but they've been out 7 times this year throughout the United States helping with fires. And when we have a little bit slower year here for fires, we have more opportunity to send those folks out. But they've done some great work and actually did. They were the incident commanders on fires and other locations, which is unusual. And they were also able to help on a search and rescue down in southwestern Colorado this year when they were on a fire. So great skill set that they're able to provide that not all fire crews are able to provide when they go out of their area. The next piece I wanted to talk about was the initial attack module, which is separate from the suppression module. The initial attack modules are in-county resource that does mitigation and response to fires here. They also do a lot of other things, as you can see. But this year, to date, they've been able to mitigate over 80 acres from January 1st to November 1st on county and private property. So they've done some work up in Waltonia, Hermit Park, Horsetooth Mountain Park, and some other areas throughout Larimer County. They're continuing to work. They were out cutting trees, removing the wildfire hazard yesterday. So they continue to do that. 80 acres was just to November 1st, but they're continuing even in the winter. We go out and do that same mitigation work. They also helped with 3 search and rescue incidents. As you all know, our search and rescue teams and dive rescue team are all volunteers, and they a lot of times have other jobs or other commitments. And so when we do have a search and rescue event that's an emergency, and our search and rescue folks, because their volunteers aren't always available because they've made other commitments, so sometimes we have to supplement our search and rescue team with our initial attack module, or even our SWAT team, our Archer team folks, to go out and help, which we've had to do a couple times this year just because we were short search and rescue team members. But I just want to make note that the initial attack module has been able to help with that. Prescribed fires, the initial attack modules helped the U.S. Forest Service with 3 prescribed fires up around Red Feather, trying to reduce the wildfire threat up there as well. So we go out there as much as we can and assist the Forest Service on that. And then the last thing, as far as an update, as far as the 2023 year goes, is our emergency services unit, which you all are very familiar with. This year, we've responded to 39 wildfires here in Larimer County. And again, this is a high level look. When I say wildland fires, it could be a smoke report. It could be something that somebody thought was smoke, but turned out to be dust from a car or something. I don't really want to dive down into specifics, but in our records, they do show up because we were called for a wildland fire, where on this it may look 39 seems like a lot for this year, as much rain as we had, but it may have been something else, and that also includes prescribed burn in that 39 wildfires. We did respond to 65 search and rescue events, either with the volunteer team, and sometimes we go out without them if we know exactly where the folks are at, and we'll just pull them out of their vehicle. We had a rescue up in the Buckhorn area recently where the specialist just went out without anybody from search and rescue and picked up the individuals and brought them back because their car broke down. So that's what we consider a search and rescue event. So 65 of those, 13 water rescues, again, just responding for somebody in distress in the water. It should be, I apologize, on the document it says 4 flooding events. Well, that's actually right, 4 flooding, and then 60 severe weather. The severe weather is obviously when we get the rain notifications, the potential for flooding. And so our folks responded in 2023, early in the spring when we were getting a lot of rain, over 60 times to severe weather alerts. So anytime there's a flood warning, our folks go out and try and get ahead of if there is going to be a potential issue rather than waiting till there is an issue. So we responded on all those. 2 hazardous material issues, typically spills on roadways. But the sheriff is responsible to make sure those are cleaned up. 8 public assistance, and those are typically where a car is broken down, a tire is flat or something like that. And then 43 public education. So the initial attack module and also the emergency services unit staff will go out and do public education on wildland fire, search and rescue, any of those topics, and present to school districts, schools, to Boy Scouts, different groups. So those public education, and those are separate from the ones that Wildfire Partners program is doing. So the next was just wanted to make you aware, and we don't really know the impact, but I just wanted to make note of it, is there's some federal legislation going through, obviously, that may impact the cost of wildland fires. And so with the permanently increasing the pay for federal wildland firefighters, that'll be a pretty significant pay bump to federal wildland firefighters, but it could increase our county costs when we do have a fire here locally, where we, like if we have a 2-day incident, obviously we're going to have outside resources help us because we don't have enough local resources. So a lot of those resources end up being federal resources, either from the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service, or one of the national parks, something like that. But with their pay increase, obviously that impacts us because we have to pay them while they're on our fires. And then also there is a lot of talk about a daily supplemental payment, a premium payment, and some of that, what wildland firefighters call portal to portal. So you get 24/7. So as soon as you leave, you're paid 24 hours until you return back to your home unit. That obviously is something new that we haven't seen in the past. And if the federal government employees get that, typically what we've seen is all the wildland firefighters get that from the fire departments to the local fire departments. Once they leave their home unit, they will get that portal to portal pay. which could paying people for 24 hours a day would be a huge impact to our budget for like a Cameron Peak fire or even some of the smaller 3 to 4 day fires. So paying people for 24 hours rather than 16 hours is a significant difference. So I just want to make note of that. Nothing to worry about, but just know that the budget for wildland fires could be impacted. I don't see it as a huge problem, but just wanted to make everybody aware. So in conclusion, I do want to note that we had our kickoff meeting for our emergency operations facility yesterday with the facilities folks and the architect. Super excited for the potential for a new facility. As you all know, we purchased the property a couple weeks ago for the new facility, and we're making some progress, which the sheriff's office and myself are super excited about for our volunteers and our paid personnel to have a new home and be able to provide a lot better service to our folks with having our equipment indoors and not having to wait for us to get it unburied from the snow as we're responding to an emergency. Some other things for you to be aware of, with the amount of calls that we have, even though it was a moderate year, the complexity and collaboration of ordering and requesting resources has changed significantly over the years, working with a lot of different partners. Even federal rules and regulations are a lot different nowadays. And so the complexity of incidents requires us to have 2 specialists on scene a lot of times when we're managing and organizing an incident. And so the sheriff's office is looking to add another specialist in the future, obviously when budgets and everything align, and I understand that, but I just want to make you aware one of our goals is to add another emergency services specialist to our program at some point, knowing there's other priorities in the county as well. And then the other piece is we continually look to figure out how we can add additional initial attack module members to our program to help with the mitigation that we do throughout the county and also respond to wildland fires and search and rescue events because they are such a valuable resource that can do multiple things. And even when they go out of the county, we see the impact to other agencies, as I spoke of earlier. And then obviously we continue to focus on our emergency operations medical program and our wildfire partners program and trying to make sure that we're protecting our community and providing the best education and support we can to our community members and our fire districts. The one part I did not put in the document that I gave you is the helicopter program. We continue to seek funding for our helicopter program because the sheriff's office believes it's a valuable asset for the safety and security of our citizens and the recreators of Larimer County, but we continue to seek funding that'll make that a sustainable program. And then last, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate all the support, and I think being transparent and keeping you and the county manager updated on the future of emergency operations makes it a collaborative effort that we can all work towards, and that you at least have an idea kind of where my focus is at, and hopefully that helps you all with as the priorities and the county shifts and changes through the future. So any questions?
Thank you, Justin, for your presentation. I appreciate the data and the information. I have a few questions, but I'll let my colleagues go first, see if they have other questions. Start with Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate the update as we requested. A lot of good information in here, and obviously you folks are very engaged in our county, to make sure that we're proactive and preventative on all of these issues. A couple of questions I have. One is regarding the emergency operations facility. Any update on putting together a funding package so that we can actually, I had to ask that question, so we can actually build the facility. I know there are some opportunities out there. I'm glad we closed on the property, but I wonder if you have any updates there, sir, and you have the captain coming up.
Yeah, I'll let Captain Tim Keaton talk about that.
Good morning, good sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tim Keaton, I'm a captain with Larimer County Sheriff's Office. Great question, sir. Ken Cooper and I met with a representative from Representative Negus's office out of D.C. If it wasn't last week, it was the week prior to that, and kind of outlined deliverables, what they're looking for, how to make a best application. I will be making an application again for that money this year. It doesn't open until late January, early February, closes in late March, early April. So my guess is we should know on a funding opportunity there in late April, early May. That's kind of the timeline we've been thinking.
Thank you, Captain. Thank you, Tim. And I'm wondering, I know that this is one of those examples of a capital construction project where I think we always have to be very creative and looking at diverse funding sources.
Mm-hmm.
I assume the budget is still somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 million. I don't know if there's an update on that because construction costs continue to increase. But I'm glad that there's consideration for federal funding, but I don't think that's going to be all of it. Or would it? Could they provide us with $20 million, the feds?
They would not. That's a great question, sir. I would love that to be the case. So last year I was given the guidance that the maximum award would be $3 million. I applied for $10 million, knowing or assuming that I would not be funded at that level. But after the awards came out, I went back in and I looked at every single award that was given. Some were very small amounts because the need wasn't great. But there was one that was awarded at $6 million. So I think that I'm going to apply for another somewhere between $10 and $15 million this next cycle, with the hopes of being funded at a higher level than the $3 million, because they have record of having done that in the past.
I appreciate that, and I'm sure that coming next year, you folks will be back to give us more information and more
Absolutely.
updates. And I believe one of our potential funding sources would be the opportunity to the current location of our emergency operations that ultimately generating some money from the sale of that property, if that works out to the
Correct.
city of Fort Collins. So I think that would generate a couple of $1 million.
That's what our estimate is as well.
Thank you.
You're right.
I wonder, well, let me ask my second question and then perhaps others can weigh in. And I'm thinking, I think this is an appropriate question. So as we look at needed resources moving into the future, knowing understanding there's a lot of uncertainty about what we can expect with regard to wildfires. I mean, the conventional wisdom is that for lots of reasons, having a moderate year, we should be thankful for that. Yet you were very busy and a lot of opportunity for preventative stuff. But moving 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 3 years from now, is there any information, data that you all use to make data-informed decisions about what we can expect with regard to the potential for extreme weather, and how some of that is is fueled by changes to climate and hotter and drier. So I'm wondering if you guys have some methodology to better predict, staffing and other kinds of resources, so we can be ahead of the game if and when, some of these Cameron Peak type fires come again.
No, and I appreciate that question. The difficulty is predicting, obviously, trying to predict weather for the next couple months is even difficult. So projecting out the biggest things we can use to project. We're constantly looking at any tool, any resource that we can, and trying to figure out best to make sure that we protect the community the best we can. As far as weather goes, the climate change is probably the biggest thing, knowing that the temperatures are going to raise a little bit. The winds are always here in Colorado and cause us significant control issues when we do have a fire. Wind is probably the biggest force that we face that makes controlling a wildland fire difficult. So I think the things that I've done, and I've met with command staff at the sheriff's office the last 2 years now, I actually have a 10-year plan for emergency operations. We're into 8 years left on my 10-year plan now because I did it 2 years ago, projecting out what I felt was needed to be successful at emergency operations, including all the programs that we have in it now. Command staff, I guess Tim can speak to that part about how they received it, but it seemed to be well received and they understood where I was going. Again, knowing that there's priorities at the sheriff's office and at the county level, and because that's my vision, doesn't mean it meets the vision of the sheriff's office as a whole or the county as a whole, but it's still, I keep those projections and I share them with command staff so they can constantly look at them, because I do think it's important. I feel like when I started in 2015 in the director position, we had 4 full-time people, and now I have 17 full-time people. We fell way behind where we should have been, and I don't want to be reactive. I want to be proactive and get ahead of it, because when you become reactive, you burn people out. They have excessive overtime. They don't have a good work-life balance. And we had lost that when I took this director position, and I'm trying to get back to where we can respond better and react better to the disasters and be better at preventing disasters as well. We'll never get rid of them, but we can mitigate to the best of our ability. And I feel that my vision for the future that I presented to command staff is a great vision that'll help us be successful in the near future for sure, and even 20 years into the future. So hopefully that answers it a little bit.
I greatly appreciate that, Captain. Were you going to add something?
And thank you, Commissioner Cavallos. One of the things I was going to add is, while we can't predict weather, obviously, one of the things we can predict is the best way to tackle these things before they start is fuels mitigation. And there's more money out there available for fuels mitigation than we have the resources to implement. So every time we put somebody on, a new full-time employee, even if we're not experiencing fires, we're seeing significant value in the future from that employee, because we're out there, we're able to utilize more grant dollars for fuels mitigation that we can then lessen the impact of future fires.
Thank you. Madam Chair, may I make 2 quick follow-ups and then I'll be done?
Yeah, because I think Commissioner Stevens and I also have a lot of questions.
I'm sure you
Yeah.
have things, but my 2 quick follow-up comments. One is on the matter of wind. The last few times that I've been up to Red Feather Lakes, there's been no wind, so they're asking me to come up more often, so you might keep that as part of your strategy. I think it's mostly a coincidence. The second thing is more serious, on a more serious note. I don't know if it applies to your area, but for example, yesterday we had our quarterly update. As the Board of Social Services and our Human Services folks came in, and a big part of their presentation was about this thing called the Larimer Decision Aid Tool. It's an algorithm. It's technology, and it scans a lot of data, and it doesn't make the decisions for the child welfare folks, but it helps. And it makes me wonder: is there a tool like that in your space that, something to keep a lookout for that might help with, predictions and all that? That's all I have to say. I'm done.
No, and I appreciate that. And I'm always looking for tools and resources that can help me to be better at the job that I'm tasked with. So I continually look at new technology and tools that are out there that I can access. So I appreciate that, and I'll continue to seek those out.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens?
I actually don't have any questions. Just want to say thank you for the work and really thank you for the updates. Really good to understand what's happening with the medical program. I think that it sounds like there is a lot of need for that, and I didn't realize all the training that person was going to do too, on top of doing the actual paramedic work. So that's great. And then just, I mean, I think it's great for us to have a heads up, and I'm glad for the questions that Commissioner Cavallis asked. But, you know, I mean, the idea that we might pay the 24-hour pay, there might be increased pay for wildland firefighters, is important for us to think about as we, you know, think about the budget. We've always had a portion of the budget that was dedicated to, you know, I think we have some reserves that we've thought were dedicated to like climate and other issues around that. And so knowing the high expense of fires to our community, and knowing how long it takes to get the FEMA reimbursements, I think it's really important for us to kind of have the full picture as we look at our budget of what that might look like in the future. So between that and some of the costs that we might have for the emergency center, I think that, you know, it's just good for us to keep that in mind as we look at the budget, and remind our legislators that we need as much of the budget as we can get, although we do want to give relief to our homeowners in our community too. So that's all I have. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, and thanks for your work.
Thank you, Commissioner. As you know, I have a lot to say about this. I want to first say well done and thank you for your work. I have a couple of questions, and then I want to talk about, we do have some tools, as you know, with the forest health work I'm working in. I've been attending a lot of fire conferences. I think the captain has been there as well, and we do know vapor pressure deficit, and the tools from the Forest Service and other folks are helping us know when conditions are being where we're going to have another catastrophic fire, because our trees aren't even able to absorb the moisture, and there's a lot of science and data. And if you, some of the things we've been doing in the Forest Health Council and the subcommittee with the Fire Commission is knowing that we are looking at what can we do to get ahead of this. We're also having forest restoration failure, and so there's a lot of work that I've been trying to educate our county and being involved with, and we have a lot of success and partnerships. And we do know from the data that our fires are not going to lay down at night, and they're going to be more severe. And I was not able to attend the Fire Trends meeting in Denver on November 1st. I was very, very honored to be invited, and but I did get all the data, and that presentation frightens me, because it looks, you know, it talks about the entire state with the climate change and the trend of our danger and our risks going exponentially up, and we're trying to get ahead of it to bend that down. And I know that's a lot of the work that you're doing with mitigation work. So my first question is, when we talk about the 60 emergency responses, which is really important because a lot of this is because of the burn area, and when we have that rain and worry about flooding. So can you expand or tell me more about what is emergency responses? Are you guys heading up when you have those, that you head up and you're waiting up there in case people need, or are you just on alert? So I'm curious about those, because it was quite a few this year.
No, that's an excellent question. And the National Weather Service, after the fatalities up in Crystal Mountain last year, updated their matrix for when those notifications go out. But yes, anytime there's a flood warning or flood advisory, a flood watch is just saying there's potential. Flood warning and flood advisory, usually an advisory turns into a watch within 30 minutes is what we've experienced. So anytime there's an advisory or a watch, anytime there's an advisory or a warning, we send folks out into the field to those areas. And if it's, as we experienced this year, there were several areas impacted. So we would at one time we had 5 people out in the county looking for flooding. And so they go out and they look for people that are needing assistance, roadways that are impacted. So they'll notify Road and Bridge. We're working with our dispatch center to make sure we're notifying Road and Bridge. And actually Road and Bridge and the Sheriff's Office relationship is great. Their folks are actually listening to our radio traffic when we get those warnings, and so we can communicate directly with them rather than having to rely on dispatch to have those conversations. So that's something we've learned over the last couple of years. And then we are also evacuating people or telling them to stay in place depending on the severity and location of those flood warnings. Up in Glen Haven, typically we tell people to shelter in place rather than leaving because we don't want them going on the road that's being impacted and washed out. So a lot of different ways of tackling that. But yes, every time there's a flood warning or advisory, somebody is physically going out in the field.
Thank you for that. That's what I assumed. And also, on top of that, also deputies are heading up because I know they race past my house because I live in an unincorporated area, and so I see more deputies than I see other because I don't live in city limits. And so I know that there's also deputies getting out and ready to go. So that's good to know. The other question I have is you are partnering a lot with the mitigation programs and kind of expanding their work. So if some of that grant money that is happening, are they if you join some of those mitigation projects with Naco Fire Shed or those, like the prescribed burns and those, are you getting reimbursed for our employees' participation?
For the prescribed fires, yes. For majority of the mitigation, yes. There are some community projects that if it's a community project in a homeowners association or a subdivision that impacts the whole community, then sometimes we've put a little bit of sheriff's office money towards that because we feel it's a worthwhile project and we don't want it to be hung up on grant money, because if the homeowners association can't find a grant, we have no problem committing some dollars to that to make it safer. But majority of the projects, 90% of the projects we're doing is all reimbursable.
Great, that's good to know. I just want to make sure that was my understanding, but I just want to make sure because that's important. Also, because of budget cuts and potential, we don't know what this session's going to look like, this emergency session. I keep hammering that we have a fire mitigation program that we give to some of those private homeowners that, kind of are smaller projects and not the landscape scale type projects that we've been involved with our partnerships and collaborations here in the county. And that's been a very extremely successful program. And that might be something that we don't have just as budgets shrink. So in your estimation, both of you or whoever wants to answer, that program, I'm assuming that you guys partner with the OEM in that program and the homeowners to work on some of these projects. Do you, in your estimation, has that been a very successful program? Because I'm trying to hopefully our legislators are listening or hearing, because this to me is really important, because I was next to be evacuated with a camera in Peak, so I know my home is area around it has not burned yet, but it could, I'm very worried about that.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and for sure, a quick answer to that is yes. The programs we're involved with in the communities are very successful and provide a huge safety measure, security measure to the communities we're working in. One of the things that we've seen from the High Park fire and the Cameron Peak fires is during evacuation, there are points and ingress and egress of the roadways, and that's really where we're trying to focus our efforts from the sheriff's office as we get grant money as an ingress and egress, because there are pinch points or where trees come together, that if there is a fire that goes through there, that people will either be cut off or caught in a firestorm, which is what we're trying to prevent. So the work we're doing with the communities right now, the sheriff's office sole focus is trying to work on ingress and egress throughout the county, making the roadways safer for first responders to go in and evacuate people, but also for the evacuees to be able to get out and not have to be cut off. And as you all know, we have a lot of roadways and in Larimer County that are narrow, one way in, one way out. So if it gets cut off during an emergency, we actually won't be able to get people out of some of our locations. But by doing this mitigation work on the roadways, we can continue to push people out, because the fire danger or the fire severity will be a lot lower because of the work we've done to protect those communities. So yes, it is amazing work that the folks are doing with the communities, with OEM and the sheriff's office.
Yeah, I agree. I can't emphasize enough the urgency of the work that we need to do with mitigation at the landscape scale in our county, let alone the entire state, because the fuels are there. And you talked about the money and the grants, but that's starting to evaporate, and because it's just so hard to get these projects and these collaborations and get them planned and submitted. So I'm hoping that you are also looking to tag on to some of these opportunities and apply for some of those grants, because it's just so much to work on. We're working on workforce capacity, because that's another issue, is trying to have the workforce, because we need that. So I appreciate that. And then the last question I have is, as you see this medical program expanding, is that something that we need to look as bigger picture in the long run for planning, if there is increasing more need for emergency services or medical transport? Is that something we need to have a conversation regionally about transport, or having responses? Because we have, as I understand, we have some of these districts that are responding to calls outside their district who don't contribute to that tax base, but they're responding because they always come in times of need. But is that something, a bigger conversation for the bigger picture with the growth in our communities, that we need to start talking about, kind of those boundaries in those districts? Not that we have any say in that, but maybe we need to convene and have a conversation.
No, and again, that's an excellent conversation. Fortunately, we've been having those conversations with LEDA and the EMS districts and the fire districts to have some of those same conversations that you speak of, trying to figure out the districts. I've looked to the future for the emergency operations medical program and have built it out for the next 10 years and fully staffed. That would be 7 people. One of our goals with that emergency operations medical program is to be able to help the EMS districts train and continuing education for the fire departments, fire districts that are outside the municipalities, because one of the things they struggle with is training and continuing education to keep their certifications for EMTs. If we can provide that to them, they will help us respond to those out of area incidents that may be in the sheriff's office responsibility outside their district, but we can request mutual aid. The problem is they aren't able to get the training right now and that continuing education. So that is something that we're working, trying to solve that problem for them. And with that being said, the other piece of it is Jeffrey Basmanowitz, or Bam, as he's affectionately known as, because nobody can say his last name. But Bam has actually responded on numerous EMS incidents. He's always listening to the radio, and that's something, again, work-life balance. But he listens to the radio nonstop, and if he hears something that maybe the fire districts are struggling to find resources for, he's out the door and heading there to figure out what he can do to either support, supplement, or solve the problem. So great asset there. As we build that program out, I only see that improving. So we are working on that issue and that problem. Something we continue to try and figure out how we can support the fire districts, because they serve such a vital role to our community and to the sheriff's office as well. Because when we have an incident in the middle of nowhere up in the Raywall Wilderness, there is no fire district up there. It's the sheriff's jurisdiction. And but they will come and assist us, which is a huge asset to us, because there is nobody else up there. And so to have those skill sets where they are able to respond with only 2 people in our medical program, that limits us. So if we can have force multipliers to help us out, that just makes us better at the job we're tasked with, protecting the community.
That's an excellent point. Thank you for bringing that up, and I appreciate you supporting those fire districts, because we have 17 in the county, and most of them are volunteer, or actually almost all of them. So I appreciate you supporting them that way. So I have 2 other comments, and then I won't. Otherwise, I could keep you here all day and ask lots of questions. First off, I'd love to offline. Love to have an update on the GIS thing we talked about a year ago, and because I want to make sure we progress with that. So I'd love to have a conversation with you about that. And then, if that's okay, Captain, I'd just like to get an update on that. And then I want to warn you, Raina is so phenomenal that I have been warned that they are in respect of, for me, they are not going to steal her yet. So that she has made an impression across the region. And this is not first time, but multiple people throughout the region have been very impressed with her. I'm hoping she's listening. She's done a phenomenal job, but I'm not kidding. People would love to steal her away, and I'm hoping we keep her. So I just wanted to tell you, I say that because that's what the first thing they say to me is, we love Raina and we're going to steal her. And I'm like, no, you cannot. And they said, we won't because you asked us not to, but just to warn you. And so I just wanted to say she's doing a great job. The residents and the ambassador program, they came down and talked about it at the April thing that I had with the collaborations, and she has built some community ties and collaborations and trusts, which is invaluable. Absolutely invaluable, and also building trust with our local governments and with the commissioners and with your office. That is immeasurable. And I just wanted to thank you and Derek and the whole team for the work that you're doing with her, because this is really important in a lot of ways, and helping us live wildfire ready here in Colorado. That's the program, right? And so sometimes there's a program which is really critical, but you get the right people in that program and they make a tremendous impact. And so I jokingly say, I'm warning you, but please express my gratitude to her for the work she's doing. She's gaining a lot of respect and a lot of teamwork. And so I just wanted to jokingly but seriously say, hey, we got a gem there, and I appreciate in this short time the impact that she's made. So I'll see if Lorenda has any comments she wants to make. Questions?
I guess I'll just say thank you for the collaboration with the Office of Emergency Management. It sounds like you all do the same work to the outside, but we know that that's not necessarily true. You all are the boots on the ground, and they do the logistics and some of the support, and that interaction is critical. And those relationships, I don't think, could be stronger. So thank you very much for that and for the work you do together.
Okay, so
May I add one thing before
Sure.
we close here? When Justin said we were, and this is kind of a information only for each of the commissioners and the county leadership for that matter, regarding the helicopter program, we certainly are not tone deaf to the fiscal challenges we're having. So when Justin said we were looking at other opportunities for funding, we actually had looked at a county in Wyoming, Teton County, that within the last 12 months have started up an extremely similar program to what we would like to do. And they were able to raise the $7.5 million to start that program, with zero of those dollars being taxpayer money, which is encouraging. I just wanted to kind of give that update, if you will, but preface it with we would never move forward on anything wherever the money came from without conversations with the three of you, so that we're completely transparent in what it looks like going forward. So just wanted to update that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, with that, we appreciate the report today and you both being here, and great work, and continue. And again, I echo what Lorenda said, is we appreciate the partnership with the Office of Emergency Management, because it does take a team, and it's really important partnerships, and also the partnerships with our other partners that are doing, this work. I would love to get that update later. So thank you very much, and appreciate you being here today.
Thanks.
Okay. So next, we have our last discussion item, which would be the Skyride LLC Behavioral Health Secure Transport License and Vehicle Permit. And I welcome Laura Walker, who will be here, and I'll let her introduce herself to discuss this next item and walk us through this, so we can look at this new opportunity we have through the state to license these important behavioral health transport opportunities. So Laura, thank you for being here today. And thank you, Ryan, for submitting this.
Great, thank you. I am Laura Walker, the Human and Economic Health Director for the county, also filling in as Interim Director for our Behavioral Health Services Department. So those are the shoes I'm wearing to bring this item to you today. So as the commissioner alluded to, in 2022, the state legislature passed an initiative to have counties take responsibility for a new kind of behavioral health transportation, licensing, and permitting for vendors who would be willing to take some of the burden off of our traditional emergency vehicles, ambulances, law enforcement, units, which also then reduces the stigma for people who need transportation in a time of crisis to a behavioral health facility where they can get the care they need, but also have the right training and the right kinds of equipment and outfitting for vehicles to do this lower level, somewhat lower level than an emergency level of transportation for people who are experiencing those kinds of issues. And so our county, and Ryan Barstow behind me was instrumental, did the vast majority of the work with our county attorneys to develop the process for Larimer County. And so we had our first set of permitting and licensing to UC Health for their transportation unit several months ago. And so this is our second application that's come through. And so this is a smaller entity as far as the volume. They are asking for a Class A secure transportation service license, and Ryan has taken them through the steps of all of the required documentation and gone through their application and found that the recommendation is sound to bring to the board to approve a license for them. And then you'll also see they're asking for one permit, so only a single vehicle, whereas UC Health had 4 vehicles that they were asking for permits for, in addition to the licensing that attaches to the entity itself. And so bringing this to the board today for hopefully approval, I think it's important to remember, as I was out in the community talking about this program much earlier in 2023, and I believe it was the joint meeting that the board actually had with the town of Wellington, one of the town trustees had a question about diversification in this program, to not have just the kind of the usual suspects, the larger entities that provide medical oriented transportation, that there would be opportunities for smaller, maybe smaller entities, or at least those folks that might have a little different reach than UC Health, but also provide more coverage, particularly maybe in more of the rural areas and less of the city-centric parts of our county. So I think this is a nice example of that. This entity is licensed in Alamosa County for a vehicle there as well, and so they're reaching into the northern part of the state and asking for a permit for a second vehicle here to be able to provide those services to people in need. So I'll entertain any questions or comments from the board.
Thank you, Laura. Colleagues, do you have questions? Commissioner Stevens.
Laura, thanks for bringing this forward. I think it's good to have more options, so I'm glad to see there was another application. And it sounds like somebody who's been experienced in Alamosa County, so they're familiar with the work. Can they add a vehicle if they choose to a license, or would that have to require a separate application process?
The license that the entity would hold remains intact for the 3 years that it's given for. The permits also, I believe, are 3 year. No, they're only 1 year, excuse me. But it would just take a supplemental application for another vehicle, and they'd have to answer the same requirements to make sure it's been inspected, has the proper equipment, the partitioning, restraints, whatever's necessary for the type of permit that they're asking for.
Okay, yeah, just because, I think that there will kind of be continued need here, and so if they see that need, I just wondered how that would work. That sounds great. Thanks for bringing this forward.
Sure.
Commissioner Kafals, you have questions?
I do not have any questions. Just thank you to you and Ryan and your team for helping to facilitate this agreement that is before us.
Great. You're welcome.
Thank you, Laura. And I do appreciate the diversification and having a smaller operator applying for this. So they're going for you said a Class A1?
It's a Class A license and then a Type 1 permit.
Okay. So I'm curious, remind me again, when we have, so the Class A can use restraint.
Correct.
So how do we ask, or what are the questions to make sure they have the training, or what kind of background, or what kind of restraints and what kind of background that they have for that?
Yeah, and I might need to have Ryan come up because he's much more versed in the details of this, but there are attestations and descriptions of the type of training that the entity has to commit to having, and also the vehicle inspection part for the permitting would also require that a Class A license also includes, the proper partitioning between the front seat and the back seat and pieces like that. And those attestations come from, licensed providers that we can verify have done those inspections of the vehicles.
So would that be okay for me to ask Ryan of that question, or would you, or?
I'll have Ryan come up if
Okay,
that's all right.
that would be great. Thank you. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So the question was
So I might just have you identify yourself. Sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. My name is Ryan Barstow. I'm the Business Operations Coordinator for Behavioral Health Services. So your question was just about the requirements for application.
Just what kind of, because we have large and small, and what kind of, because so I'm curious, because we provide the licensure, but we have to check that we have to provide that assurance that they have, especially if they're using restraint, that they have the training or they have certain procedures in place. And how do we go through that process?
So a lot of it is through self-attestation through the applicant, but they also have to have inspections of the vehicles and submit all that information, photographs of the vehicles, insurance. They need to have a quality management plan in place, and the applicant is required to submit all sorts of information to the state once a year about all the services that they're providing. But basically, a lot of the requirements of the vehicle and restraints and everything is inspected and authorized by some sort of mechanic or a qualified individual.
Great. And do we know how long this entity has been operating in Alamosa County?
I don't know for sure. The applicants are here with us. I don't know if we can invite them up to speak to that, but it's
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for helping us.
Just curious how long you've been operating in Alamosa County.
So, Alamosa, it's been about 3 weeks now since we finalized everything. The whole operation is behavioral secure transportation in general is a very new endeavor. It's been in place since July 1st in this form. So we don't really have a lot of experience. I don't think any other organization has a lot of experience. It's a new endeavor that we're going through.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I think it's the only questions I have. So, Ryan, is this a yearly update for this licensure, or is it in perpetuity?
So the license is approved for a 3-year time period, and the permits are approved for a 1-year period, at which point applicants have to reapply and submit additional information about, have new inspections done, the vehicles and everything. However, we don't have any kind of annual update on the providers. That's part of our process at this time, but that's absolutely something we can look into.
Yeah, I think that would be good since it's a new program, and it'd just be nice to make sure that we're doing, in my opinion, our due diligence and following up, because it is new and people are kind of jumping in the scene. It would just be, I think, important that we're just kind of following up on things. So I think that's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. And just a quick follow-up, if I may. 2 things to think about. We will have a schedule internally to the Department of Behavioral Health Services to make sure that as those 1-year cycles are coming through on the permitting, that we are checking back on those and doing renewals at that time. And we can certainly make sure to keep the board updated if there are any concerns or questions or major changes to that. And we would do the same thing on those 3-year cycles for the licensure. But the other piece to keep in mind about quality checking and training and those type of things is that providers that are licensed in this way are eligible to get Medicaid reimbursement for the transportation that they provide. So they are also under the regulatory requirements of Medicaid providers and the quality assurance that has to come with that as well. So there's more oversight than just the entity that did the licensing and the permitting from the beginning, because Medicaid will stay involved with all of those providers and certainly be another resource point to make sure that their services are adequate and appropriate.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, I just have one more question. So is there like a limit to how many miles they can drive with somebody in the, I'm just thinking like Alamosa County, like, when you're in a county that doesn't have a lot of resources, or if we have, resources, somebody has to be resourced with facilities that we don't have in our county. Are they have the ability to drive outside the county? And
my understanding is yes.
Okay.
And so I believe it's a flat rate for the Medicaid reimbursement per transport that's being made, per client that's being made, but I don't believe that there are limits on the mileage, given that there are some very rural parts of the state that just don't even have services within a certain radius to be able to limit that.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, I think that's all I have at this time.
Okay.
So I might have questions more later. So Commissioner Kafalis, any comments, questions?
I do not.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Ryan. And thanks for applicant being in person today. Okay, so without any further questions, Commissioner Stevens, would you make that motion, please?
I will, Madam Chair. I move to approve the behavioral health secure transportation license and one vehicle permit for Skyride LLC. Skyride, I guess that was in Skyride LLC.
Thank you for that motion. Any further deliberation? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on now to our county manager update. Thank you all for being here today.
Good morning, Commissioners. I will keep it very brief. Of course, I do a lot of external and internal coordination with different groups, but one highlight last week was an opportunity to meet with the Road and Bridge Department. Once a year, they bring all their staff together at the ranch, and they have everyone in the same room. They start the day with a stretching exercise, and they're really committed to getting that done. But we talked a lot about the budget, some of the constraints, the questions that are going on around the budget, and the strategic plan and how they might have a role in that. They were so engaged. It was really a wonderful group. It was 7 in the morning and so energized. It was really wonderful. So I wanted to thank Todd Juergens for inviting me to that group again, and to all the staff for being so interested and engaged and asking good questions about county government. I think I went over my time by about 10 minutes, which is really rare for these kind of meetings. So I really enjoyed my time with them. I'll leave it at that as my highlight. Thank you.
Thank you. Lorenda, colleagues, any questions for Lorenda? Okay, we'll start with our commissioner activity reports. We'll start with Commissioner Kafalis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, one area that I focused on last week was I had 5 constituent meetings, one-on-one meetings, and that's always very helpful. And then on Wednesday, I participated in the Workforce Development Board meeting, which was at Broadcom. And so we had a rather brief meeting, but then got to tour Broadcom, and it's quite an interesting facility. They're rather significant semiconductor manufacturers. It's good that that's happening here. And of course, as a reminder, last year they were one of the recipients of our Environmental Stewardship Award for some of the technology that they're deploying to reduce some of their greenhouse gas emissions. Also on that Wednesday, November 8th, we had our Ag Advisory Board meeting, and one important takeaway there, I suppose, is that they finalized a 2024 work plan. Some of the key areas. On Friday, all 3 of us participated in the annual Veterans Day event at Colorado State University. The roll call, basically reading of the names of fallen soldiers, and it's always very impactful and meaningful to participate in that. And then on Saturday, on November 11th, which actually is Veterans Day, we had our LaPorte community conversation. Many thanks to Leslie, our community planning infrastructure and resources director, and Mark, our county engineer, who were present. We had about 10 people, including us. Good discussion on transportation related matters, in particular, the Highway 287 and some of the surveying that the Department of Transportation is doing to look at traffic safety issues on that roadway. And there was also an updated discussion on the proposed realignment of Highway 287 and what the roundabout will look like in the one intersection where 21C is. That is all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, so I just want to start out by congratulating all the newly elected city council members and school board members in our county. We look forward to working with you. Congratulations to those who also ran. It's hard putting yourself out there, so so we just appreciate that spirit of civic duty that you all have shown. And like I said, we look forward to meeting with your new boards. Did want to say that I attended my first Middle Income Housing Authority meeting, so I was thoroughly lost, and it is going to be a complicated board, complicated funding mechanisms to try to get some workforce housing in communities, but I think that I'll enjoy working on that board. And then Veterans Day was great. As Commissioner Kafala said, we read names at CSU. I think Commissioner Shattuck McNally and I also attended the breakfast for veterans at Community Corrections and Alternative Sentencing. We had some breakfast burritos. We got to visit with veterans that both work there and who are serving some time there. And that was just a great experience. One was a Vietnam vet, and then many were veterans of military, some of who served in more current wars and some who just served. So we thank you all for your service. And then finally, I got to be on a podcast with a CSU student on Sunday. It was a fun experience to talk to a third-year honor student about some of the work that we're doing, particularly some of the work we're doing around ozone, ground level ozone problems that we have in our community. So that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you both for sharing what you've done the last week. I will start back with last election day. I agree, Commissioner. I want to congratulate all our newly electeds. I look forward to partnering with each and every one of you. And I want to thank all the candidates who ran. And it's not always easy. And there was some tight races. And so I know there's still some that are out there that haven't been finalized because of the tight margins. So it was great to celebrate with some of those folks, and already we're been reached out to talk about partnerships on air quality and things. So I'm really excited about that. Before I went to some of those events, I got to tour Vindicate Foods with Mr. Nathan and met a lot of the volunteers. I went when they were actually getting food in, but also having folks come and get food. And the line was out the door, and it was very interesting to see how they operate and the kind of food, and look at kind of their challenges with storage. And it was really an interesting tour, and I appreciate their time, especially since they had me come when people were in and out, and it was so many people. It was just, I appreciate them taking time away. And there was a lot of volunteers, and I got to meet a lot of the volunteers, and that was very exciting. And I appreciate all their work and volunteerism, because it's important support. This week I've met with some police chiefs and fire chiefs and had some great conversations, and I appreciate their time. And as we talk about our work with fire mitigation and also regional opioid abatement, and so I appreciate their time and their insights, and I look forward to bringing some of our ideas to the regional opioid abatement meeting. I think it's this week. We had our NACO. I sit on the Steering Committee for Environment, Energy, and Land Use, along with the Regional Opioid Abatement, Regional Action Caucus, which I did not go to the national conference this week. It was just, I felt a lot too much to go out to West Virginia, but we had a lot of talks about some of the again, Waters of the U.S. It was a very productive meeting. There's some interest in some of this possible policy submissions for the National Legislative Conference in February. So there's some New Mexico women commissioners and I might join on one of their policy submissions for that steering committee. So more come. I met with some constituents who are lived experience folks about recovery from addiction and the need for treatment centers or sober living. And so that was a great conversation. I appreciate their time, especially since they're working and taking their lunch hour to meet with me. And then I got to join the Pig Thompson potential operational delineation mapping and planning, which was from the Big Thompson watershed health partnership, and that was very interesting. It was at our Office of Emergency Management, and we had a lot of just conversations on GIS, the need for GIS maps, and the pods and the work that they're looking to do to collaborate. So instead of working in silos and maybe working on projects that are close, but still not getting as much done. So they're trying to pull their resources together, work along and collaborate. And it's a great strategy. And they're also going after some of that money that was mentioned earlier. So it's really important work. I appreciate the joint meeting we had with our planning commission. We had some really great discussions with that, and I appreciate our conversations that we have together with the planning commission and their service to our county, because it's a really important group that does a lot of work. We talked a lot about the water plan and kind of the public feedback, so that was really important. We met in person about the Larimer County Interagency Oversight Group, and I have a copy, but they're changing their mission statement and some of their goals. And so if you're interested in looking at that, I can share that with you later. Also, there's some potential sharing out and groups and looking at, it was an in-person meeting, so it was really great to be together, but it was some potential overlap with some of the school districts trying to help children who cannot be in school that are dealing with addictions, and how we can help them close that learning gap, because it's hard to learn at home, especially when you're struggling with challenges, but also if you're not able to be near resources to help you keep on track with learning. And so I think that's something I might pursue and talk about. And then we had our Office on Aging Advisory Council meeting in this room last Thursday, and the group invited the legislators to come to talk about the cut in the governor's budget this year, and looks like for next year on some of this services for Office on Aging. So a lot of the grants and resources that we give out to our partners for SAINT and Ride Along Assistance and other programs were there was really reduction in the budget last year, and it looks like for this year. So they wanted to really have a one-on-one talk with legislators, and that really well. I think a lot of them were asking about what it looks like in the budget now. It looks like that's maybe a concern, and so it was, I think, really impactful and a really good conversation. And I appreciate Representative Kipp, Representative Basenecker, and Representative Mobley to come and to have those conversations and hear those questions. And it was really powerful, and I think it was a good conversation. I appreciate their time that day, especially as they're getting ready for their special session. And I want to just tell my colleagues the broadband bill that we're looking at it's on the CCI Priority 2 list. Is progressing well, and we have some partnerships, multi-county partnerships there, and so it's a really good progress there. So I wanted to share that with you. It's always wonderful to read the names of the fallen. I appreciate the opportunity in the last few years to do that, and it was great to see President Amy Parsons. I came in and read right after her. I'm sorry I missed my colleagues. I think we switched places, because right after I read, I went over to the Veterans Breakfast with Tim Hanna and the Community Corrections Group, and I appreciate the invitation. We had a great conversation over there. And it was just a lot of fun to talk with them, but it is always a very honorable, and I really feel grateful to have the opportunity to read those names and talk with the students who organized that event. They read right after me, and we had a really great conversation, and I appreciate their time. I did Veterans Day in Loveland's pretty active. I participated in supporting some of the bell ringers, and then we did the talk with the veterans before the parade, and Lee Cooper from our Veterans Services was in full uniform that day, and he was part of the parade, and he was allowed to shoot off his musket to start the parade, and we had to fly over at 11:06. The parade starts at 11:11, and I walked with Mayor Marsh and some other veterans. A couple of them were in their supportive adaptive chair, motorized chair, so they rode along with us in the parade as we walked, and I could not keep up with them. So we walked very fast, but they were a lot of fun. And we walked to the Veterans Park, and there we had a speaker from a woman, Marine. She's probably 5'2". She was a helicopter. She was in the Marines, and she's from the Eastern Plains, and she was injured as her she was injured in a helicopter crash. She lost her leg, and she had a lot of severe injuries, and she would have spent her whole life in the Marines. She loved her job. She's also a gunnery or on the helicopter. She operated and shot the weapons, and she had some great success with that. But now she's an inspirational speaker, and she came to talk about her outlook on life, because it's a miracle that she survived, and she was very inspirational, and we got to talk with her and appreciate her coming out. A lot of the veterans there were very touched by her speech. Got to talk with some World War II veterans who were brought in and supported to come to the ceremony by other veterans in the Honor Flight group, and it was really a moving morning, and so I always appreciate that. And then we took some of those veterans to lunch, so that was fun. So that was very impactful for me to have that opportunity to not only talk about, we all do that, but it's good for me to talk with them, do the parade with them, and then get to do some things to support them and thank them for their service. And then on Thursday, we had a pretty busy day, but I just wanted to again, just thank the Board of Social Services. I thought it was a really great meeting yesterday to talk about the research and the innovative work we're doing, and I want to give them another shout out for their work. And then we had a leveraging resources committee for the Forest Health Council yesterday, as we're looking what other states are doing with fire mitigation work. And it was interesting because they're combining preparing area and in-stream floor and water mitigation work with fire mitigation work, and they kind of do it differently, but they've broken down all the silos and work in regions, so they have regions work together, and they actually pull more money and get more done. And so it's something that we're interested in looking at as a Forest Health Council and exploring and asking a lot more questions. But I found it very we were all like stunned at how much work they're getting done, so it's something we're going to explore some more. And other than that, it's been interesting week with elections, and Veterans Day always seems to happen that way, but it's certainly a lot of opportunities to get out in the community and connect, and I look forward to our new partnerships. With that, at 10:42, we have no other items on our agenda, and so we are adjourned. Thank you.